Black Friday is coming, and for the adults in your life who love the coolest toys, well, there's something for them this year too. Bartesian is the premier craft cocktail maker that automatically makes more than 60 seasonal and classic cocktails, each in under 30 seconds at the push of a button. And right now, Bartesian is having a huge site-wide sale. You can get $100 off any cocktail maker or cocktail maker bundle when you spend $400 or more. So, if the cocktail lover in your life has been good this year, or the right kind of bad, get them Bartesian. At the push of a button, make bar-quality cosmopolitans, martinis, Manhattans, and more. All in just 30 seconds. All for $100 off. Amazing toys aren't just for kids. Get $100 off a cocktail maker when you spend $400 through Cyber Monday. Visit bartesian.com/cocktail. That's BARTESIAN.com/cocktail.
Welcome to Mind Love, episode 278. Today's episode is all about clearing hidden limiting beliefs at the core of your mind's psyche.
We're here to evolve. We're not just physical animals. We are part animal, for sure, but we're also psychological beings, and we're also spiritual beings. We're divine beings. We're emotional creatures. That's part of this multidimensionality that we are. And any place in that system can get stuck, can get blocked by an old belief or an old pattern, something that happens to us, traumas. You know, we split ourselves apart during a trauma so that we don't have to feel it. And so that's a part that gets left behind that can be recovered and bring ourselves back together into a whole self, which has all those dimensions, all functioning well, all functioning beautifully. It doesn't mean life isn't hard, but the attitude and the place you come from is a place of wholeness and compassion and love, the things that we all want and need.
Turn up your frequency with Mind Love. Bite-sized brain hacks for seekers, dreamers, and doers. It's time to give your mind a little love with your host, Melissa Monti.
If this is your first time giving your mind a little love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button. Mind love is a habit, and the more you give your mind that love and intention, the better you'll feel about yourself and your life. Plus, it's really a win-win because more subscribers means Mind Love attracts even more amazing guests to bring you their wisdom. So don't forget to subscribe. Do you ever feel like you just can't make progress? Maybe you believe you're not meant for success, or you're not meant to find your dream partner. Or no matter how many times you pay off your debt, you keep finding yourself in the same cycle of spending. Whatever that thing is that keeps you stuck, what if I told you that it's likely not an external problem? The root cause is actually a limiting belief. So what even is a limiting belief? Well, it's a thought or idea that we hold on to about ourselves or the world around us, usually at the subconscious level, that holds us back in some way. One of the most common types of limiting beliefs is the belief that you aren't good enough or that you're not capable of achieving certain things. If this sounds like you might doubt yourself and your abilities and then give up on your goals before you even try. Another big one is the belief that you're not worthy of love or success. When you don't feel like you deserve something, it can really get in the way of you actually going for it, which leads to talking yourself out of things, not going for them at all, or self-sabotaging a relationship because you may as well give them a reason to leave now if they're gonna do it eventually anyways. And you can identify some of these surface-level limiting beliefs just by observing your negative self-talk. What's running through your mind when you're beating yourself up? Or when you're talking yourself out of something? One of the best ways to break through your limiting beliefs is to start challenging them. But the problem is that the first step to challenging them is to become aware of them. And some of these beliefs can be harder to spot because they're so deeply rooted in the subconscious. About a month ago, I worked with the guest that you're going to hear today to get past some of my limiting beliefs, and I uncovered several that I had no idea were even there. It was definitely an emotional session, and I left it feeling kind of raw more than I did empowered. But then guess what happened? In the last month, I've just felt like nothing has been holding me back. I've completely revamped Mind Love's membership, adding tons of value. I've launched a course I've been putting off all year long on how to organically grow a podcast, and I'm launching a new shop for Mind Love. And I'm not even telling you about all of the things that I'm up to. And consider the fact that I'm doing all of this between 7 and 8 months pregnant. I haven't felt this motivated since about the first year in my business. And yes, the action that I'm taking feels so good, but the biggest difference is how I feel when I'm doing it. And I'm not sure I would have even noticed if it weren't for the comparison of knowing how this feels compared to how I felt last year. I didn't even realize that I was moving through my goals, almost as if there was an anchor pulling behind me. I knew that my brain had a negativity bias, so I just kind of thought that all of my self-doubt was normal. And it partially is. But now there's just something different, like a weight has been lifted. And now when I feel those negative thoughts coming up, it's almost like I naturally reroute and start visualizing my success instead of having to put so much effort into it. And yes, I have worked on my limiting beliefs before, and I did when I first started Mind Love. And I really don't think that I would have followed through if I hadn't. And launching Mind Love was also one of the first personal goals that has been really sustainable for me. And I credit that to the work that I did before I even started. But what I've learned since is that the work can go deeper. Sometimes the beliefs are deeper. And that's the depth that I'm ready for. So if you are too, you are going to love this episode. Our guest is Lion Goodman. He's the founder and CEO of Clear Beliefs Institute. He has 40 years experience as an executive coach, teacher, and subconscious pattern detective. He's also the creator of the Clear Beliefs Method, a proprietary process for shifting beliefs at the core of the psyche, healing childhood wounds, and resolving trauma. Lion is the coach that I worked with last month, and as I shared, this really, really worked for me. So 3 key things you will learn are the unexpected ways we accumulate limiting beliefs, all the way back to our time in the womb, how self-indoctrination leads us to false conclusions about ourselves and the world, and 7 steps to overcoming limiting beliefs with the Clearing Beliefs process. Before we go deep today, I want to give you a little gift, and I want to give it to you every single day. It's called the Morning Mind Love. I know how life can be. You're all fired up after an inspiring episode, and then a new day or a new challenge comes at you, and it's just hard to keep up that energy. Well, the Morning Mind Love is kind of like an oracle from your higher self to help you start each day with a positive focus. Plus, when you sign up, you get 2 free gifts, a 30-minute binaural meditation and 30 days of journaling prompts to help you remember who you truly are. And it's all completely free. So join over 9,000 people and go to mindlove.com to sign up or text the word morning to 33777. And now let's welcome Lion Goodman to the show.
Thank you so much, Melissa. I'm so happy to be here with you.
So what originally inspired your research or your journey into consciousness and spiritual healing?
I think the first thing that inspired me was the feeling when I was a kid that I was weird and different, and I didn't fit in, and I didn't really know how to make friends. And so I was alone a lot of my childhood, even though I had siblings and parents. But I was kind of wandering around in the dark, trying to figure out how to become normal like all those other kids. And I'm proud to say that after 50 years of struggle, I never became normal. So that's thank the Lord. So, but what happened was that kind of drove me into a particular direction, which was trying to understand myself. Like, what is it about me that's different, or that's broken, or that's a problem? I found out that I wasn't broken and was never a problem, but that's also the good news that comes out of this search, this quest. So I ended up taking more than 100 workshops and trainings in self-development, consciousness studies, and philosophy, and science, everything I could learn about myself. Turns out I was learning about the universal principles of all of us, deep psychology, and how beliefs work and how beliefs drive us in our direction that we're going, how they filter our reality. So that became the thing I was most excited about, because I wanted to know how to change. And I found that the greatest leverage for change was belief change.
And you had a pretty intense near-death experience as well. How did that affect your path and the trajectory that you ended up on?
Profoundly, in a word. I had become a traveling salesman, even though I had gotten a degree in consciousness studies. Nobody was hiring people with degrees in consciousness studies at the time. This was in the mid 70s. And so I got a job as a traveling salesman. I was traveling around in a van, and I would stop and help people on the road because I was a good Samaritan and, liked people. And this one day I picked up a fellow whose car had broken down in the Mojave Desert when it was about 110 degrees out. And so I offered him a ride, and he took the ride, and I had this van, and he brought his stuff into the van, and we ended up traveling together for 3 days. And I grew to trust him and sent him on errands and, gas up the van and like that while I was calling on stores. And we'd camp out somewhere at night, and we were out in the middle of nowhere and near Claremont, California. And I was in the back of the van, he was in the front of the van, and suddenly there was an explosion. And I felt something hit me in the head, and I looked up, and there he was with a gun pointed at me from the front seat. And my first reaction was, he's warning me he's going to take my stuff. And at that point, I just said, it's all yours. Because he could have left me naked outside in the desert and taken everything, and that would have been just fine at that moment. But then he shot again, and I realized that he wasn't warning me he was going to kill me. So at that point, I realized, okay, here I am, 26 years old, kind of lost and, trying to make my way in the world. But it was obvious this was the end of the road because I couldn't defend myself. His hand was propped up. There was no way I was going to get out of this. So I said, okay, well, if I'm going to die, how do I want to die? I certainly don't want to die with anger or frustration or upset. I want to die in peace. So I started praying and connected with Source and felt this golden love light coming through me. And he shot again for a third time. And I wanted to clear the past. So I went through my history very quickly and forgave anyone that had ever hurt me and asked forgiveness from those I had hurt. And I was expanded in this space and time, this kind of multidimensional space. And yet there was still all this love light pouring through me and out of me and into him, including him. And he shot me for the fourth time. And the first and the fourth bullets hit me. The other two missed me by fractions of an inch. And my head was thrown sideways and all this blood was rushing down. And I was already out of my body at that time. I was like looking down at the van, and it looked like a little dollhouse with two people doing antics inside. I thought that was amusing. But suddenly I was back in my body, and I didn't know why, but there I was. But somehow I felt intact. And so I picked up my head and turned and looked at him because I wanted to look my assassin in the eyes since I was going to die. And he freaked out, and he kind of jumped up and he said, "Why aren't you dead, man? You're supposed to be dead." And I said, "Well, here I am." I didn't know the answer to his question. And he said, "It's too weird, man. It's just like my dream this morning." And I said, "What dream?" And he said, "I dreamt I was shooting at this guy, but he wouldn't die. But it wasn't you, it was somebody else in the dream." And at this moment I went, who's writing this script? And how did I get into this movie? It's like, this was like so weird, And so I realized if I could keep him talking, maybe he wouldn't kill me. And that began an 8-hour conversation. Yeah. So
my mouth is just dropped open.
Yeah.
So you're sitting there, 4 bullet wounds to the head, just having a conversation, and now you're going to talk for another 8 hours before you get medical help?
Yeah. That's what
Keep
happened.
going.
So how do I want to put this? I was still in that love light. Even though I was back in my body, my head was bleeding. I didn't know how badly I had been shot. I was kind of looking for a hole, from the inside going, I ought to be able to see light from inside my brain, but I felt intact somehow. And so I started talking to him very slowly, and he was all adrenalated. He was jumping around going, "Why aren't you dead? You're supposed to be dead. I shot you 4 times. And so I just used a very quiet voice, and I stayed in the love light. He was included in this love that I was radiating. And eventually he kind of quieted down, and we started talking, and he came over and he looked at my head and he said, "Does it hurt?" And I knew that he had shifted. He went from being an assassin to someone who cared about me. And I said, well, yeah, it hurts, but I think I'm okay. And at one point he said, okay, man, I'm going to take you to a hospital that I know. And I said, okay. I thought that was a good idea. Like, yes, please. And so he kind of put stuff around me so I couldn't jump him, even though I was like not about to do that. And he got in front of the van and he started driving. And he drove for, I don't know how long, because I was completely out of time at this point. I was in this very strange space. And I think it was about a half an hour to an hour, something like that. And then finally the van stopped and the lights turned off. And I knew we weren't near a hospital because there were no bright lights. It was very quiet. And so I just sat there, and a couple of minutes later, he walked up to me and he sat down next to me with a gun kind of hanging out of his hand. And he said, I can't take you to the hospital, man. I have to shoot you. And I said, oh, why is that? And he said, because if I take you to the hospital, they'll put me back in jail. I can't go back to jail, man. And then I thought, oh, not only is this a crazy person with a gun, he's an ex-con with a gun. Like, this is bigger than I thought it was. It's like even crazier than I thought. So I said, well, maybe we don't have to, I won't turn you in. He said, no, I can't trust you. That began a long conversation. And at one point I said, I need to get up and move because I was in this crouch position. So we got out of the van, he pointed down toward a pond about 20 feet lower than the road. And so he pointed me to walk down in front of him. And so I walked down, and he had the gun behind me. And I knew he could just shoot me in the back and push me into the water, but somehow I felt invincible. And so I reached down and I washed some of the blood off my face and my head, and I turned and stood and looked at him. And he looked at me funny, and he kind of held the gun out to me. And he said, what would you do if I gave you this gun? And I said, I'd throw it out in the water there. And he looked at me and he said, you wouldn't try to kill me? You wouldn't shoot me? I said, no, why would I do that? You have your life, I have my life, we're okay. And he had a really curious look on his face. And he said, man, you are the weirdest person I've ever met. And I said to him, I'm probably the weirdest person you'll ever meet. Right? So that weirdness that I felt as a kid, actually helped me survive. So we ended up talking more. I got his story, his backstory. Why did he decide to do it? When he decided to do it, and all that's written up in my story, which has been widely published. And a movie's been made based on that script. But I knew that we had both been transformed. He was as transformed as I was, because I didn't react with anger. I didn't react with violence. I reacted with love, and that's what saved my life.
That is incredible. I didn't expect to laugh so often in a shot in the head story, being honest. And please tell me you guys are still Facebook friends. What happened to this guy now? Just kidding.
I have not seen him since. That's the answer to that.
You know what's interesting about mindfulness? It's not just about being present in the moment. It's about being thoughtful about the future. We meditate, we exercise, we work on ourselves, all to create a better tomorrow, right? But there's one piece of the future planning puzzle that nobody likes to talk about. I get it. Life insurance feels heavy. But here's the thing. Just like meditation is an act of self-care, getting life insurance is an act of family care. It's about making sure your love continues to support your family, even when you're not there to do it yourself. That's why I want to tell you about SelectQuote. They're one of America's leading insurance brokers with nearly 40 years of experience helping over 2 million customers. Their licensed insurance agents work for you to tailor a life insurance policy for your individual needs in as little as 15 minutes. And here's what's cool. They actually reward you for taking care of yourself. If you're in good health, they work with carriers that could get you same-day coverage for up to $5 million, no medical exam required. And it's way more affordable than you might think. You could even get coverage for up to $1 million for as little as $20 per month. We just did this all recently after putting it off for years, and I can't tell you the peace of mind just from getting it done. So get the right life insurance for you for less at selectquote.com/mindlove. Go to selectquote.com/mindlove today to get started. That's selectquote.com/mindlove. You know what's funny? We spend so much time feeding our minds, reading books, listening to podcasts, learning new things, but then we grab whatever's convenient to feed our bodies. And I get it. Life is busy, and sometimes a drive-through feels like the only option. But that's why I take Field of Greens.
It's a greens powder made with whole organic fruits and vegetables. No extracts, no lab-made stuff, and just 1 scoop a day gives you simple, real nutrition. Field of Greens feeds your body with fruits and vegetables medically chosen to support your heart, vital organs, and immune system. And let me tell you something. Since I started taking it, I've noticed these little changes that show me how nutrient depleted I must have been before. Like the ridges in my nails, gone. My sleep, so much better. And my stomach just feels happy. You know that dreaded afternoon crash that has you reaching for more coffee or sugary snacks? Well, that's not happening for me anymore. When your body is actually nourished, it runs so much better. I've tried other greens powders before, but Field of Greens is genuinely different. The quality is next level and you can taste it. It's become my go-to, especially on those days when my eating isn't exactly Instagram worthy, because we all have those days, right? And here's the thing. They are so confident that you'll love it too, that they offer a 100% money-back guarantee. That's how much they believe in their product. So I got you 15% off your first order and free rush shipping. Visit fieldofgreens.com and use promo code MINDLOVE. That's promo code MINDLOVE at fieldofgreens.com. fieldofgreens.com.
So did he end up going to jail, or did you guys just part ways and call it a day?
Well, while we were trying to figure it out, how can we both get out of the situation? Because he didn't want to kill me. He wanted out as badly as I did. And so we were negotiating for a couple of hours, trying to figure out how to do it. And I finally said, look, the only way this is going to work is if I don't turn you in and you promise to never do anything like that again. And if you can make that promise, we can let each other go. And he thought about it for a minute and he said, okay. So we drove to a place that he knew. He got out of the van with all his stuff. I drove myself to the hospital, and the emergency room doc said, well, 2 bullets bounced off your skull. He said, you're a lucky man. And I said, yeah, I know. But I knew I was actually blessed man. I wasn't just lucky. So he went his way, I went mine. And the rest, then I started putting my life back together. And you asked at the beginning, how did that impact me? Well, since I was out of body, the thing I knew most clearly was that I was not my body. And the second thing is I wanted to understand why he did that to a perfectly nice guy like me, and that I dove even further into the subjects I had studied in college, which was psychology, developmental psychology, neurophysiology, the brain, philosophy, linguistics. It's like I wanted to learn everything about what makes us human. Why are we the way we are? And eventually I found my way to understand that beliefs are the infrastructure of the human mind, and they're what we construct our reality from. We construct our perceptions and our reactions and our responses to the world. It's based on what we believe. And that's called by many names by other people, paradigms, maps of meaning. It's the meaning-making part of the mind. But I find beliefs being the easiest way to talk about them. It's what we make the world out of. And it's part of our natural process of putting together a mind with patterns that we can identify and then hold on to because they will help us survive in the future.
I wonder how much of your response to that man was your past experience of consciousness, soul searching, and how much of it was divine inspiration because of your sort of connection to source.
How would one tell the difference?
Well, I mean, when you really go deep, if you consider time isn't linear, they're both happening at the same time, and it was all just that energy was meant for you.
Yeah. I've looked at it probably every possible way you could look at. I had been studying myself, even in college. I had great teachers who were inviting me to look at myself no matter what I was studying. If I'm studying biology, I'm studying my own biology. If I'm studying psychology, I'm studying my own psychology. So in spirituality, I was a kind of spiritual freak. So I was trying everything that came through town. I was in Boulder, so that was a lot. So yeah, I was an explorer, and I had experimented with drugs and with meditation and with yoga and all kinds of things. So and I also studied death and dying. I mean, that was one of the topics. When you're in spirituality, you sort of look at death, and I understood the process. It didn't scare me to die. I was surprised, that I was going to die at the age of 26 instead of as an old man. But the prospect didn't really frighten me. And so when I was out of body and looking down, that space that I was in was like, oh yeah, I've done this lots of times before, and so it's no big deal. It's just another doorway through to the next place.
So that your past beliefs or your beliefs at that time shaped the way that you were able to respond to that situation, and I would say dramatically changed the outcome compared to what would have happened to somebody else. Or it seems like that wasn't his first time doing something like that, and he seemed surprised by the outcome. So it was obviously not the norm. And so you talk about how beliefs are what we create our reality from. And we've talked about beliefs a good amount on this show, but I always like to get at these responses from different perspectives, because I feel like we each have our own unique kind of dimension of understanding of things. And so when we talk about beliefs, where do you see them as primarily coming from? And what are these beliefs actually?
This is my primary study for the past 40 years. And most people, when they talk about beliefs, they're talking about a mental construct. They're talking about, well, I believe in Santa Claus or I don't believe in Santa Claus. I believe in God or I don't believe in God. It's associated with faith in a way, or with a thought that keeps repeating itself over and over again. That's a mental approach to beliefs. I see that our beliefs come out of our experience, and experience is multidimensional. Right now, you're seeing, hearing, and smelling, and feeling, and sensing me, and energetically, and we're looking at each other's eyes, and we're getting to seeing something beyond the physical, right? So our experience is multidimensional, and if our beliefs come out of our experience, then beliefs must be multidimensional. And most approaches to belief change are one-dimensional or two-dimensional at most. So you might try a mental technique like, well, I'm just going to change my mind. I'm going to change what I believe. Or I'm going to say affirmations over and over again, and eventually that will take. Or I'm going to emotionally emote and beat a pillow and express myself emotionally. Or I'm going to tap on my points on my body and say something, and that will change my energy. Now, all those things are true, but they don't get to the infrastructural level, which is multidimensional. So beliefs are physical, intellectual, emotional, spiritual, relational, environmental, energetic, philosophical, right? So in order to, what I discovered, and this was, I think, my breakthrough, was that if beliefs are multidimensional structures, then to clear a belief, you have to clear it multidimensionally. Because otherwise, a good chunk of it is left over, and it'll keep coming back over and over and over and over again. And that's what most people experience with belief change work, is that it just keeps coming back, and you have to do the process over and over and over. And what I found is a way to do multidimensional clearing, which makes it go away completely and permanently, and it never comes back. And that's what makes my work different. So what are they? They are how the mind is structured, because even babies are looking at patterns. They're pattern detectors, and then they're holding on to those patterns because that pattern will be useful later. So if this face comes close, I feel warm and cuddly, and I get nurtured. If that face comes close, I feel cold and prickly, and it's uncomfortable. So babies, even inside the womb, they're actually picking up patterns from the mother's energy and the mother's hormones, the mother's diet, right? And so those patterns are fixed. They become fixed. They're the things we start building our mind and our awareness out of. And then we keep adding new patterns and new patterns and new patterns. Eventually we get words around age 2. And then we start putting the world together with words. Now we have abstractions of experiences, but that's just part of our experience that we're building so that we can survive. And then we inherit beliefs from our parents because their parents gave them those beliefs so they could survive. They want us to survive, so they give us their beliefs. And we eagerly take them on because babies know that they can't survive on their own. So they take on the beliefs of their parents because that will align them with their parents. If you are like someone, they will like you more. So when we take on their beliefs, we are more liked, more likable, and we feel more safe. And so 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 we feel more sa and then they won't throw us out to the wolves. So this is deep instinctual mind building that's going on. And it goes on and on and on. The problem is that the old beliefs that were useful at one time don't just disappear when you get a new belief. They get pushed down into the subconscious mind and pile up as this huge pile of thousands and thousands of beliefs that were useful at one time but are now interfering with your life.
It's interesting because I had the experience of, yes, aligning to my parents' beliefs, and then teenage years, what do you call that, happened, and I just rebelled. I went the other way, religiously, politically, whatever. But it wasn't until I was older that I realized, yeah, these surface level beliefs, like the sort of faith in the system or whatever that you were talked about earlier, yes, those I was consciously able to move away from. But the older I get, and especially now that I have children and I am just seeing my own patterns, it's like the age mid-30s when people start saying like, I'm becoming my mother. Oh no. It's like, I have done a lot of work to rewire different patterns. And so I didn't expect that they'd still pop up in the way that they do. But I can now, it's like I've removed like layers 1, 2, 3, but then it's these little things. Like all of a sudden I'll resist something, or I'll just notice a pattern in my life and I'm like, what is this coming from? Clearly my beliefs, but it's the more subtle, really underlying subconscious patterns that I notice I couldn't so easily just choose to rewire.
Yeah, I'll give you a great story that I love. One of my clients was a multimillionaire, and he had a pattern in his life where he'd make millions of dollars, then he'd lose millions of dollars. Then he'd make millions and lose millions. It happened over and over again. He was tired of it. And so he came to me and he said, figure this out. What's going on? And so using my processes, I took him back in time earlier and earlier and earlier following a particular pattern. And he got to the place where he remembered being 3 years old, walking on the streets of New York with his mother, holding her hand, and he saw a shiny penny on the ground. And he got really excited and he reached down to pick it up, and his mother jerked his hand and said, don't touch that, it's dirty. And he suddenly realized that old belief was driving his whole life, that he couldn't hold on to his money because he shouldn't touch it and it was dirty.
Wow.
That's how deep it goes. And we cleared it and he didn't have to lose money anymore. So he continued to grow his millions. So that's the kind of thing that we don't know the source of, but it's back there somewhere. Every belief we got somehow, somewhere from someone or from our own conclusion based on what was happening to us. So these are very deep patterns. And that's, you're kind of deep diving into the muck and mire of the subconscious mind to find the source. But then if you can clear it at the source, then everything else changes. It's like, dropping a rock in a pond. As it ripples out. So when you change at that identity level, who I am or what I am, it changes how I see the world. It changes how I feel about myself. It changes my thoughts, my feelings, my actions, and my choices.
So what types of things do these deep-rooted subconscious beliefs affect, or what are they the determining factors in our lives? So what types of things do these deep-rooted subconscious beliefs affect, or what are they the determining factors in our lives?
Well, the first response I had was almost everything. So the hardest beliefs for people to live with are the ones where they either were told or came to the conclusion that there was something deeply flawed in them, wrong with them, bad about them. Those are the negative self-beliefs that are like a heavy cloak that they have to operate in the world through. You should be ashamed of yourself. Oh, I should be ashamed of myself. Okay, that means that I'm so flawed or broken that I'll never be fixable. That's what shame is that belief. And if your parent told it to you and you aligned with it, or you came to the conclusion, I'm being beaten regularly, that means there must be something so wrong with me that I deserve to be beaten. Children will blame themselves for almost anything that happens to them because you can't a child doesn't look at the parents and go, wow, they are really screwed up. They should have gotten a parenting 101 course. They should have been in therapy for 20 years before they had a kid. They need some help. So kids can't do that. So they just assume that it's something about them that is what the problem is. I'm being abandoned. There must be something wrong with me. I must be flawed. I'm being rejected. There must be something wrong with me. I must be bad. They're punishing me. I must have done something really bad. I must be a bad person. So those are the beliefs that get under our skin that are actually the core of our personality. No matter how much you do on top of that, go to therapy, take workshops, do trainings, do affirmations, do all the things that we think will help. That core belief is still there, producing the experience that it was designed to produce, which was shame or guilt or disempowerment. So we have to go down and excavate them from the underground and pull them up into the consciousness and then process them so that once that belief can be processed fully, it gets integrated, the lesson gets learned, it's no longer active. We can actually clear it from the psyche completely.
A lot of times when we're discussing where the beliefs come from, we talk about ways that we're indoctrinated, socialized. We take a lot from what we see from the people around us, from our parents, from our society. But it sounds like what's can be even more powerful are the ways that we self-indoctrinate by the meaning that we give to everyday experiences.
That's absolutely true. And since you talked about meaning making, we could say that the human brain is a meaning making machine. We want to understand the world. So we put things together and say, oh, that is a cat. Well, that's a belief that animal, which is extraordinary all by itself, has a label that we can put on it. And we say that is a cat. And when we say cat, point, mommy says, yes, that's good. That's a cat. Cat goes meow. So we're putting together the world, our world frame, what it's made of. Now, the problem is as soon as you have a label on something, you're no longer experiencing it. So instead of seeing the cat as an extraordinary being, unless you're quite stoned, which is when these things fall apart. You just go, oh, it's a cat. And you stop seeing it fully. Or we see a friend and we go, oh yeah, that's a friend I don't like. Oh, now you're not seeing their fullness as a human being. So the labels are just a form of beliefs that we put on things in order to abstract and talk about them when they're not there. Early people basically could hold things in their hands and carry them around. But as soon as we could abstract and say, fire, where fire, fire there, it's like, so we now have a way of talking about things that aren't there. That's the beginning of language and labels. It's very useful. Language is a useful construct, but it prevents us from experiencing the world fully because we're in the mental label mind, not the experiential mind.
I have noticed that actually. There's been times in my life where I have some sort of conflict with somebody, and especially the longer I go without seeing that person, it could be your mom or your cousin or whatever, you're like, have this sort of tiff, and then you just see their posts online. And I've said to my husband before, I'm like, I just need some face-to-face time with this person because I can feel myself turning them into a one-dimensional character. And the more that they're a one-dimensional character, it dehumanizes them and it's easier to just other them. And whenever I know that I'm othering somebody, or when I sense that I'm othering somebody, it's my trigger that, all I'm doing is actually othering myself and choosing separation in this moment. And so I like the way that you put that because it is true that in order to create that meaning, we flatten our reality.
Beautifully said. And this othering instinct is actually quite old. And if you look at monkey and ape troops, they're very cooperative and collaborative inside the troop. They're caring for each other, taking care of each other. Sometimes they can fight, but it's all about being in the troop, because if you're part of the troop, you can survive as a social animal. If you're pushed out, you're going to get dead soon, right? Because a monkey or an ape can't survive on its own. So belonging is one of our deepest instincts. So we want to belong to the troop we're born into, which is the mother, father, alpha, male and female. And then we find groups to belong to. But also troops fight with each other for resources. So there's the other troop of monkeys across the way, and we do battle for the fruit in this particular tree, and then they'll come and raid us, and we'll go and raid them, and so we other in order to be part of the group, and that other becomes the enemy. And so we've created a whole world in which we're all mixed together, but we're still doing the same pattern, which is to see other people as not me, not us, not my group, not my troop. I need to stay with my troop to survive, and I need to make sure we kill those other people because they're competing with us for resources. So this is a deep part of why we war and why we fight and why we get polarized political views, because it's easier when you make someone other, then you know who you belong to. You know that you're the group that is not them, right? So you feel more like you belong, and that's such a deep instinct that it drives our behavior like crazy.
I was having a conversation with somebody like a month and a half ago, and about similar instincts, but a different primal instinct. And this person was just like, well, if these are primal instincts, then why are we fighting them so much? It's our nature, like, is it really bad if that's also what the apes do, And my response though was that I'm not trying to live with my primal instincts. My whole goal in this life is to evolve and to ascend. And that's why our brains got bigger. And that's why we have these emotional capacities that basic animals don't have. And so I'm like, if you want to go just like claw at people for food, go for it. But I'm trying to like connect to source and my intuition and really see what's possible. And that's, I think, for me, the human experience is the ability to sort of navigate that and go above and beyond. And it reminds me too, somebody said, it's always these wealthy woo-woo people that seem to get the most from these like really big experiences, consciousness experiences. This is in LA, and I agree with that. And sometimes I'll have resistance of it. I'm like, oh, is this just another little rich kid that like thinks he's found the light? But there's something to be said for a population that is no longer in survival mode. Then what can happen? And I'm not saying that like the wealthy are more spiritually evolved or have it all together, because I know plenty who don't. But there's something to be said for what is possible once all of your basic primal needs are already met. Because when we are in that place of survival, we're only using that one part of our brain. Everything else gets shut off. So I just know that when I'm worried or when I'm in fear, I can't think above the line. I can't reach out and ask, well, what else is possible? It's hard. I've got to sort of meet those primal needs first, and then I'm able to elevate, and then I'm able to come up with new ideas, and then I'm able to sort of more change my situation rather than just feeding the need or scratching the itch.
Beautifully said. You're talking about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? First are the physiological needs: food, water, shelter, warmth, right? And then come the needs of safety. We need psychological safety, emotional safety, physical safety, financial safety. Those are things that we need in order to elevate up to the self-esteem needs. Who am I? Am I liked? Am I appreciated? Am I seen as someone of value? And can I have love? And can I have relationships? It's hard to get there if you're down trying to get your physiological needs taken care of, or if you don't feel safe. And then when you get your esteem and relationship needs, then you can do your intellectual needs like curiosity and growth. And then eventually what he calls self-actualization, which is essentially spiritual needs and even transcendent needs that you can then fulfill. And we are on this path. We are on this evolutionary path, as you said brilliantly, by the way, that we're here to evolve. We're not just physical animals. We are part animal for sure, but we're also psychological beings, and we're also spiritual beings. We're divine beings. We're emotional creatures. That's part of this multidimensionality that we are. And any place in that system can get stuck, can get blocked by an old belief or an old pattern, something that happens to us, traumas. We split ourselves apart during a trauma so that we don't have to feel it. And so that's a part that gets left behind that can be recovered, the Amazon people call it soul retrieval, right? So and it's the same kind of work I do in this healing process with beliefs, as we go and recover the parts of ourselves that we got left behind, and bring ourselves back together into a whole self, a true self, which has all those dimensions, all functioning well, all functioning beautifully. It doesn't mean life isn't hard. Life can be hard, but the attitude and the place that you stand, the place you come from, is a place of wholeness and compassion and love, the things that we all want and need.
So how do we determine which beliefs are affecting us currently? Because like you said with that story in the penny, first it seems like you need to notice the pattern. Do you need to see the pattern that's going up and down? Because some people don't even have the awareness to see which patterns keep coming up in their life. They just know that they can't find a relationship, and they don't see that they're attracting the same type of relationship over and over again. So how do you start to get clarity on what needs to be worked on?
I teach 10 different methods of finding core beliefs, because everybody's a little bit different. We need to have a bunch of tools to be able to, work with whatever shows up. But finding core beliefs is one of the key ways that we can do that, like going deeper and deeper and deeper levels. One of the easiest ways to do that is to ask the question, what's underneath that? So someone says, I just can't sustain a relationship. And you ask, what's underneath that? Well, it's that I'm only finding guys that are bastards. Oh, what's underneath that? Well, that seems to be all that there are out there. All the good men are taken. What's underneath that? Well, I'm just not finding them. What's underneath that? A lot of sadness and grief. What's underneath that? It's this feeling of loneliness I have inside. What's underneath that? And you keep going down and down and down to deeper levels. And at the bottom is usually some belief. So that's one of the 12 techniques I teach for finding core beliefs, is just asking that question over and over again. And we train people to do this kind of work, is first to find the belief and bring it up from the unconscious mind. In my ebooks, I offer this process called belief self-diagnosis, which is a way of bringing those subconscious beliefs out to the surface, so you can at least look at them and recognize that that's what's running you. And that's I give that away because it's such a powerful exercise. So there's lots of ways. Some of them you can do yourself, and some of them, frankly, are too deep for you, and you need to go to someone who can help find it and excavate it. Because on top of the belief are all kinds of adaptive strategies to hide it from yourself, because you don't want to look at it, because if you looked at it, it might be too painful. So we make sure that we distract ourselves or procrastinate, or we do stuff to keep it hidden instead of being able to confront it. It takes a lot of courage to confront your negative beliefs.
I like that you brought that up. I was just interviewing someone on projections, and I remember one of the first, in the beginning of your spiritual journey, there's certain things that you see that you'll just never, or read, you never forget, because it's so paradigm shifting. And I remember I just came across this YouTube video titled Athene's The Theory of Everything. And it talked about how our brain is basically lying to us all the time, because we make these irrational decisions and we don't like to believe that we're irrational. So before we even have time to consciously bring attention to, well, why do we just snap at our partner for no reason? We're pulling out reasons, and it's like, well, he did this, he didn't empty the dishwasher, blah, blah, blah. And so then in the fight, you'll go from one annoyance to all of a sudden you've come up with all of these reasons to back up what you just did, when there was no real reason that was about that person in the beginning. It was about you. And so that's so important to note. I'm constantly reminding myself that, because so often we're justifying our decisions or justifying why we're doing something, and all we're doing is we're cementing in these beliefs without even knowing it, because we aren't just instead asking ourselves, what's underneath that?
We have to understand the physiology of the brain. Those kinds of reactions happen in hundredths of a second. I'll give you a great story. I was going to a party one night, and I knew that it was going to be a great party, a lot of people I knew. And as soon as I walked in the door, I felt weird. I couldn't explain it. It just like just awful feeling throughout my whole body. And I knew something had triggered me. I didn't know what it was. It didn't matter, but I knew also what to do. So I sat down right near the front door and closed my eyes, and I felt the feeling, because you have to start with the felt sense of the feeling the body sensations. And I felt it and felt it and felt it until I really was in it. And then I asked the question, what belief are you? And immediately I heard, I don't belong here. And I went, aha, there's that old belief that I thought I had cleared, but it got triggered somehow. Now, what do? Well, I have a technology for clearing the belief and replacing it with a better belief. So I cleared the belief, I don't belong here, replaced it with a belief, I belong here. Opened my eyes, stood up, and it was a completely different party. Instead of people seeming cold and distant, they're all friendly and warm. Hey, Lion, come on over, let's talk. And so that took about 20 seconds. So we get triggered. I didn't know what had triggered me. Maybe there was someone's face that I glanced at momentarily. Maybe a smell that had triggered me. Maybe it was someone, brushing their hair in a certain way that reminded me of my mother. I don't know. And it didn't matter. What mattered is that I faced into the trigger, felt it, and then inquired into it, which then allowed me to see, oh, yeah, it's just a trigger. It's not serious. It's not real. It's just a reaction.
That's what's so important about being in tune with your body, because that's how I dealt with my trauma, was basically cutting off feeling of my body. I ended up developing an eating disorder and all of these other negative patterns that just cut me off from feeling. And so a huge part of my journey, or my self-development, or really self-discovery, was actually reconnecting and being able to feel instead of just reaching for something that would numb it immediately. And so those feelings and being aware of, oh, I'm feeling something, whereas most people, or at least my past self, I would be just acting on that feeling. I'd be like snappy, or I'd want to leave, or I would just judge the people around me, or whatever it is. And then it's about them. It's not about me. There's nothing to introspect. And so being able to have the courage to actually feel those feelings can be such an indicator of some of these beliefs that you can then make a choice about, instead of having them subconsciously drive your life. And also that space that you created for yourself of actually asking a question, because so often we're like, I don't know why I'm this way. It's like, have you ever actually just sat there long enough to ask and see what came to you, and trusted that you have an inner wisdom that might give you an answer? And so I am curious, that feeling was helpful to sort of diagnose this underlying belief for you, but what's the overall relationship between thoughts, feelings, emotions, and beliefs?
You ask really good questions. I see consciousness as kind of a clustered crystal. You get one of those quartz crystals, and if you look at it from one direction, it looks a certain way. And if you turn it 45 degrees, it looks completely different. And if you turn it another 45 degrees in another direction, it looks completely different, from the top versus the bottom, the left versus the right. So it's a complex crystal that can be seen from many different angles. To me, because I see beliefs as the multidimensional infrastructure of the mind, we could look at that crystal through the thought view, through the particular view that says everything starts with thoughts. And you turn it, and now you're looking at it through the emotional view, and you say, everything starts with emotions. Or you turn it to the spiritual view, and say, everything starts with your karma, or your spiritual self. But these are all aspects of human experience. And so I look at it wholly and say, this is a multidimensional thing going on, that every belief creates certain thoughts, it creates certain feelings, certain sensations, certain emotions, certain choices, certain behaviors, certain actions. And you could do that with whatever way you look at it. But when you see it as a whole thing, they're not causal. One doesn't cause the other. One isn't first. They're all happening at once. It's a harder way to look at experience, but for me, it's what works best, because instead of trying to track down, which happened first, the thought or the emotion, it's like, oh yeah, this is human experience. It's filled with all of that. Let's find the core material. Let's find the causal level. And for me, the causal level is down there in the meaning-making belief structure of the subconscious mind. And it's primitive. It's very, very, very old. I'll put it that way.
So we figured out how to sort of self-diagnose, uncover some of these beliefs for ourselves. What is the first step to actually beginning to clear some of them?
Well, as you know, there's many ways and offers of how to clear things. In my technology, the Clear Beliefs method, we take a multidimensional approach. We find whatever the surface issue is, and then we work our way down to the belief layer. And that might take 15, 20 minutes, maybe a half an hour in some cases. Sometimes it's obvious. Sometimes you have to dig, I call it excavating because that's what it's like. You get in the backhoe and you start clearing the major pieces of dirt in order to find the gems. The gem underground somewhere. And once we find the gem, then we have a number of processes for clearing them. One of those processes is called the belief closet process. It's actually where I got started 20 years ago when this process kind of came to me when I asked for help. And it came to me and said, boom, it was like it happened all at once. And I said, wow, that's pretty cool. I bet that'll work. And it worked great. I started teaching it to other people. So that's just one of the more than a dozen processes that I teach that are able to actually clear it multidimensionally. Because you can keep chipping away. If you have an iceberg and you've got a spoon, you can try to dig your way down the iceberg to get to what's underneath, or you can just put on scuba gear and go down and find out what's at the bottom. And so that's what we do. We're deep divers. We go and find that material, and then we have a number of different processes to change it. One of which is called rescuing the inner child. So when you have a trauma as a child, what happens is that part of you gets stuck in that experience. Now, other parts of you keep going and growing, but there's still a child experiencing that trauma in the mind's memory banks, right? So we actually take people back into time and change what happened for that child. We actually rescue the child from that situation. And now that child self has a new, different experience. Something else happened. That bad thing didn't happen. Something else happened. Someone came in and intervened. Someone rescued me. Someone took me out and took care of me at that moment. And memory is malleable. So when we go back and we change memory, that child is no longer in that situation. They're now living a different life in a different place. And so that process shifts everything because that child's no longer in trauma, no longer carrying the trauma, no longer living in it, because that child was stuck there at that time in that experience. We clear that out of the way. All of a sudden, the person comes out of the process and they're a different person. Their identity is different. Their history has changed. So we're using this understanding that memory is malleable. In psychology, it's called memory reconsolidation. There's a name for it in psychology, and there's research being done to show that you can change memory. Now, 5 people having the same experience are going to remember it 5 different ways. So there's no truth about what happened. There's just our interpretation of it. And our interpretation of what happened is where the belief layer comes in. And that's the place where we actually have leverage.
That makes a lot of sense because it's not about the objective reality of what happened for any of us. That is what we carry. It's the meaning that we give it. And so that's happening regardless of if you're consciously or subconsciously going in and trying to sort of remake some of these memories or your childhood experiences. I have 2 stepbrothers, and there are things that we both experienced that I'm like, were you in the room? Like, where did that come from? Nothing like that happened that day. And they're like, I swear. And they have different versions of it. And I'm like, so yeah, it's not the way that we perceive an experience, even in the moment, depends on those beliefs that we're holding and the emotions that we're feeling and the thoughts that we're having as it is. And so nothing's objective.
That is objectively true.
That's the only one thing. So I love leaving listeners with something that they can really do themselves to feel the change of what they've learned in this episode. So do you have a practice that you could walk us through that they can work on this week to kind of ground this information into their reality?
I do. That one of my favorite things is to show how our beliefs create feelings, because a lot of people don't have those two connected. So here's what I invite you and your listeners to do. Close your eyes and feel what it feels like to hold the belief, there's something wrong with me. As if it's 100% true, even though another part of you knows there isn't. Just see what it feels like. It's like trying on clothes at a store and saying, ooh, this feels icky. I'm not going to buy this. So feel what it feels like to hold that belief. Say it to yourself, there's something wrong with me. And feel it in your body. Feel what happens to your body, its urges, its sensations. And Melissa, what is that feeling that you're having?
I felt three things. First of all, I have random back soreness just from being pregnant, and immediately those felt more intense. I had to straighten up actually because I could feel this like stabbing there. I also felt my throat close, and then I felt like the barriers of my skin, I could just feel it more. And in my mind, I immediately sort of interpreted that as it was like reinforcing my separateness.
Mm-hmm. Beautiful. Other people have other experiences. Some people feel it as heaviness or denseness or condensed, or sometimes the feeling of like wanting to run away. So everybody has a slightly different feeling that belief creates. So imagine that was an outfit of clothing you tried on. You went, ugh, took it off, threw it on the floor, and just let it go. Good. And now try on a different belief. Try on the belief, I am a sacred and worthy being. And feel what it feels like to hold that belief as if it's 100% true. What does that feel like?
I could almost feel myself elevating, like my posture naturally got straighter. I felt lighter, and for some reason I felt like the top of my scalp tingling.
Lovely, lovely. And again, everybody will experience it somewhat differently, but the general pattern is elevation, lightness, openness, that kind of thing. So what we've just shown, and by the way, you can take that one off or you can leave it on if you like it.
I'm gonna leave it on.
So this is one of the ways we show people that our beliefs create our feelings. Now, it turns out that, as I talked about that party story, is you can also work backwards and go from the feeling to the belief. So if you're having a feeling, you can ask what belief is creating this feeling. Or you can try on different beliefs. In fact, I recommend trying on lots of different beliefs to see what they feel like. Now, this does a couple things. One is it increases our empathy for other people who have those beliefs. So as an example, I was raised Jewish, but one day I decided to try on the belief, Jesus is Lord, those who believe go to heaven and those who don't go to hell. Now, that's not a belief I'd ever tried on before. But as soon as I tried it on and experienced it, I realized, oh my God, this is what people feel when they go out proselytizing. They want to save these poor people who are going to hell. And so it gave me an understanding of that urge. They weren't just going around trying to beat people over the head. They were actually wanting to help other people. So that gave me more empathy for people who held that belief. And you can try on any belief. Like, it's great to be rich. Well, feel what that feels like. Or, poverty is better than wealth. Try that belief on. So if you become facile at trying on lots of different beliefs and see how they feel, how they make you feel, you'll gain an understanding for other people that are holding those beliefs and operating out of those beliefs. So there you go. It's a great exercise to do.
I love that. I think that especially is so needed right now. I feel the division, and it's something that since mid-2020, I'm like, that is what I'm going to work on within myself, is to focus on oneness. And instead of having resistance to other people, I'm going to have resistance to the idea of separation and really try to understand other people rather than judge them for what they're feeling. So there's so many ways that we can do that with what we learned today, as well as, going to the very root of some of our own patterns that maybe we're not even able to see that other people are judging us for. So thank you so much for bringing this wisdom and for all of the work that you've done in your life in order to compile it and really receive guidance and teach other people. So for listeners that are interested in learning more and possibly working with you, where's the best place for them to connect?
My personal website is liongoodman.com. That's Lion with an Lion. And my story is there under articles if people want to read my story of near death. And also my coaching services are there. The training that I do is called the Clear Beliefs Coach Training. And they can find out about that at clearbeliefs.com. And we offer a free monthly event where people identify their beliefs in a particular area. We've done one on money, one on love and relationships, one on sexuality, and we mix it up every month. And that's a free event. And they can register for those at beliefrelief.net.
All the links for this episode will be at mindlove.com/278. Your challenge for this week is to start getting clear on some of those limiting beliefs. And sometimes it's easier said than done, but then other times it's the opposite. You know exactly what beliefs you need to clear. So it really depends on what you are going through and how blind you are, no offense, to your own limiting beliefs. For me, there were some that I knew right away and others that I just couldn't see until I worked with somebody. But one of the questions I found that has been really helpful when I come across them in real time is just asking myself, well, what if I'm wrong? And this question can be in regards to beliefs about yourself or beliefs about the outside world. Because remember, not all limiting beliefs are just about you. It could be about what's possible in the world, what other people think of you, which is sort of about you, but also sort of about them. So just ask yourself, what if I'm wrong? That question at least puts a crack in that really thick shell of your belief. And don't just immediately start negating yourself, although that might be your tendency. Actually sit with that. What if I'm wrong? Let your mind flow. Also ask yourself, how is this belief serving me? Because when you see that the only thing that this belief is doing is holding you back, you might become less attached to it. And then the next step is around creating an alternative belief. Try a different one on for size. If your limiting belief is that you can't be promoted because women in your company don't get promoted, what if you change that belief to, this company has just been waiting to promote the right woman, and I came in, shattered all of their preconceived notions about what women can or cannot do, and now they just can't not promote me. Just see what it feels like. And there's so many ways to do this. And in a minute, I'm going to tell you about a guided option for doing this as well. But first, if you loved this episode, please share it with somebody, maybe somebody else who's going through some issues with their own personal limiting beliefs, or take a screenshot and share it on social media. Flex a little bit. Show people the work that you're doing on yourself, the things that you fill your mind with. There's so many people out there that are just sharing their top Netflix binge, and then it sucks a bunch of other people into their Netflix binge. But what if you showed people what you are listening to and it sucked them into that? This is how we level up the world. Well, the best way to support Mind Love and also to get more deeply involved is by joining the brand new Mind Love membership. So I know that I've talked about Mind Love Premium before, and that's still there. That is the premium feed. You get ad-free episodes, you get early release, you also get a whole backlog of exclusive episodes. But I've recognized that people have been wanting a way to actually learn to embody some of the things that we learn on this podcast. There's a lot of listening that can be done, but sometimes it goes in one ear and out the other. Sometimes you forget it by next week. And so I've created the Mind Love membership to tackle just that problem and to help you embody the Mind Love principles. So every month there will be a new masterclass, sometimes two. These will be audio or video courses that will help you apply the most meaningful lessons to your life so you can create a life of purpose, a life that you can't wait to get up for. And this month we have some really exciting masterclasses. We have two, and they are in two areas that have changed my life the most. First, understanding how I actually need to prime my mind before I make a big change. I used to just decide on a new habit, wonder why it wouldn't stick, then realize there's a little pre-work to be done. So there's a masterclass on that. And guess what? There is an entire module on clearing your limiting beliefs. So if you're pumped by today's episode, that is the best way to have a guided experience with me on clearing these beliefs for yourself. And there's also a masterclass with Amanda Crowell, who's an executive coach. She's an expert in deep transformation and finding the work that you are meant to be doing. And so there's a masterclass by her all about finding deep and meaningful work that is meant for you. You can find out all about the new Mind Love membership at mindlove.com/membership. I hope to see you there. It's going to be so exciting. You can also find any of my sponsors at mindlove.com/sponsors. And that's all for today. So thanks for giving your mind a little love today, and I'll see you next week or inside the membership.
Thanks for tuning into Your Higher Frequency with Mind Love. Head to mindlove.com for a free gift to keep your vibes up until next week.